Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Totalbiscuit from CynicalBrit.com and the YouTube channel Total Halibut. And I am joined by Martin from FatShark. You might remember them. There was a video a little while ago on the channel. It's entitled Hamilton's Great Adventure. And they've just announced a brand new game as of today. This is the first interview they've done since the announcement. We're going to talk about it. It goes by the name of War of the Roses. Martin, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So, tell us a little bit about War of the Roses. Nobody who hasn't seen this press conference has any idea what it's about.
War of the Roses is basically a third-person multiplayer game. There's a single-player campaign, but with a storyline, but it's mainly focused on multiplayer. We are throwing in people into huge battles with horses on the ground, with weapons, axes, swords, crossbows and bows. Yeah, basically that's the core of the game. We want to make a game that people that like in shooters that people can pick up very fast, get familiar with, and just throw themselves into the fray of the battle. It's in the England 472. War of the Roses is a wonderful setting for the game, so we're really pleased to announce this.
Yeah, that's quite unique considering, and it's also a little bit interesting that you chose a setting like that and yet went with a more accessible approach as opposed to, say, doing a grand strategy game, which is very common for that kind of area of time. But you don't see multiplayer melee games. In fact, you don't see a lot of multiplayer melee games at all. And it's interesting, of course, that you publish under Paradox, who also published Mountain Blade. Was Mountain Blade any kind of inspiration for War of the Roses?
Mountain Blade is a great game. Obviously, they were really pioneers in this kind of area with the multiplayer big games with the melee. So this is somewhat different, I think, because we're only focused on the multiplayer, just like we did the Letting Go, the Wild Western shoot a long time ago. And we want to bring this kind of multiplayer and very much focus on the multiplayer. Yeah. So, but I mean, obviously, Mountain Blade, a pioneer in the area, of course. Really
very much so, yes, indeed. And they adopted that after the first game, which actually didn't have multiplayer, and then it's a Warband, which did. And you actually mentioned Lead and Gold there, which was going to lead nicely into my next question. Lead and Gold was obviously your first game in terms of multiplayer and things like that. And then you went on to Hamilton's Great Adventure, which was a single-player game. So what lessons did you learn from Lead and Gold as regards to multiplayer game design, and how do you intend to apply them to War of the Roses?
Very good question. The first is that we want still going to keep the team-based approach, that we want to make the player play as a team. We want to use the typical settings of the area of the time. And of course we learned a lot about, we have changed, we have a new engine, the Biscuit Tech it's called. It's very much focused on bringing a lot of characters to the screen, a lot of movement, we can have a totally different type of network approach, which makes us possible to play a lot of players at the same time. We haven't decided how many players yet, but we are pushing the limits all the time and see how many we can get into one single battle, because we want to create big battles.
Oh yes, and of course the Mountain Blade games are a little bit of a benchmark for that. We've seen some absolutely fantastic, crazy battles, and of course the use of mods and things like that, like Mountain Musket or something along those lines, I believe. But yeah, that's really interesting. Now, Lead and Gold, if I recall correctly, had a mechanic for team play where each class had a unique aura. Is that the kind of mechanic you're going to be revisiting, or are you just going in a different direction now to encourage team play?
Yeah, we probably take a different approach here, because we want to stay true to the area. We don't want to destroy the immersion, or what's the buzzword, but still we want to have it feeling like it's some kind of historical correct. We won't be historical correct all the way, but we will have the feeling as long as possible. The most important thing is obviously still to make a game that's fun to play. So we will have more of the game mechanics in terms of like the game modes. That's the important thing to try to get people to play together. I mean, we haven't decided on bonuses and that kind of stuff yet. So
yeah, of course. Now, you did say that you wanted to make it accessible, kind of like Call of Duty, but you wanted to make kind of the Call of Duty of melee games, I suppose, which is that's always a very nice PR-friendly term. It's like, we want to be the Call of Duty. We're going to be Call of Duty with swords, and I suppose the natural question from there is, do you intend to have any kind of persistent progression in the game?
Yes, very good question. That's one of the main things we want to add as well. In contrast to Letting Go, for example, we want to have unlocks all the time. So the player you can play, you get maybe if you're really good with your bow, you get a new bow that's more a little bit more shiny. Maybe you get a nice helmet, like you would do some wings or something like that. And you unlock things. I mean,
hats, basically. You're taking the TF2 approach. Unlock hats. That's always a good way to do things. Honestly,
obviously, really nice.
Yes, unlocking. Hats. Hats are very, very important, I tend to find, and I'm a great believer in hats. So
I totally agree with you.
Cameraman is shaking his head. He's like, you're just taking completely off course. Stop right now. Let's talk a little bit about the melee mechanics, because this is the big concern that a lot of people have with taking a melee combat game and putting it into multiplayer. How do you deal with lag? How do you deal with the idea of precision melee combat? Or do you go for a more hack and slashy approach? So what is FatShark's approach to melee in multiplayer?
Good question. I think as you mentioned, you need to have specific strategies to deal with this, because it's really a perfection sport. I mean,
it's
you
difficult.
need to have, and you need to be able to parry. So you can't have it too fast, because then the defender can't have the chance to parry.
Yep.
You can't have it too slow, because then it feels like sluggish.
Yep.
So I can't comment on the technical side on it, but we're working a lot with it, and it's really, really a core area for the game as well.
Yeah.
So it's a good question.
It sounds like something that you'll, needless to say, need to tie down, and that's really going to make or break your game, I suppose. It's like Call of Duty would perhaps not be very good if the shooting wasn't very good, for instance. So
exactly. It's really important.
Swinging a sword or stabbing with a lance has got to feel good. And you were talking about horseback right there. Now, obviously, horseback combat is... You get a bit of an advantage if you happen to be on a horse or lance and that kind of thing. How do you intend to balance it? Because I assume some people are not going to be on horseback.
Yeah. The balance thing is that all the levels we won't have horses. Horses is something where we feel it's appropriate to have the horses.
Okay.
We will have horses.
Right.
Obviously, for example, if you use a lance, for example, when you charge, you have a cooldown on it, so you can't do it all the time.
Yep.
Obviously, you can kill the horse. So if you have like a big two-hand weapon, you can slash the legs of the horse, and then you get the rider down on the floor. So I mean, I think from what we have played so far, it feels good. So that's as much I can say about it.
Okay, yep, that seems entirely reasonable to me as far as I'm concerned. Now, the single-player component you said is going to be a tutorial to the multiplayer, and you're not really thinking about adding any kind of major campaign elements to it. Yeah,
we will have a campaign. It will be story-driven, but will be very linear. And will be like in steps. So the goal from our side is that the player that played it should be better multiplayer players. So you shouldn't be like, hammered directly when you go into multiplayer, because that's boring. So you have the chance, and then you also can unlock like special weapons from the single player campaign that you can use in the multiplayer.
Right, that's fair enough. Now, when it comes to weapons, as you were saying before about unlocking things like that, the setting is quite specific.
Yeah.
How realistic are you really looking to go here when it comes to the weapons that are appropriate to the time?
Yeah, we will be as realistic as we can without like removing the fun.
Of course.
So to be honest, for example, in this time area, there were gunpowder weapons.
Yes.
And they will be in the game.
Yeah.
As of now, it's early in the project, so things can change. I would have to say that.
Of course,
but I mean, the plan is to have gunpowder weapons as well, and some people might think that that's not appropriate for the timeline, but
it is. Anyone that knows their English history is well aware of that, but they also know that those things can be highly unreliable and take a very, very long time to reload.
Exactly.
So
that's how we balance it. So.
Yeah, something to consider, exactly. So I suppose if you want to be an archer, it's still viable. It was certainly still viable at the time.
Yeah.
And accuracy was a big deal as well. Obviously, volley fire with muskets was very important because of the lack of accuracy, whereas, say, English longbowmen, they actually have the range there. So that sounds good. What kind of other weapons can we expect in the game, and will there be any there's no point in me saying will there be any surprise, because it won't be a surprise anymore, but what kind of weapons can we expect?
Obviously there's our like two-handed weapons, one-handed weapon and shield. Obviously we have mentioned the lance. So I mean there will be the weapon you expect to find in this kind of game, the gunpowder weapons, of course.
Excellent.
So,
Now, a couple of little technical questions. Obviously, you might not be able to answer them yet, but I'm just sort of putting this idea in your head just to make sure you remember. One, will LAN be a possibility, or is this going to be purely online play?
No, I think it will be purely online, because I think the same with the single player. As you unlock stuff, you will have them in multiplayer.
It has a persistent account.
Otherwise, people will cheat and get stuff unlocked, and then you bring them online. So
that's a perfectly reasonable reason to do that. And I suppose the other question would be, do you plan on providing any kind of mod support for this game?
Yeah, we have tossed around with it, and I mean, obviously that's a dream to do it. We haven't decided if we can do it and what stage we would do it. I mean, obviously, this is a game or a brand we want to work for in the long time. So there will be a first release, but we won't like stop releasing stuff to the game afterwards. So we will continue developing the game.
Okay, so there are plans for things like DLC after the fact,
for sure.
Post it.
I see this as a long-term project.
Of course, yeah, absolutely. Well, that sounds absolutely fantastic. I assume that you do not have a release date for this game yet.
No.
Okay, so there you go, folks. Keep an eye on it. War of the Roses by FatShark, the company that brought you the mighty, mighty Hamilton's Great Adventure, as well as Lead and Gold, Gangs of the Wild West, which was sadly underappreciated in my opinion. So if you see it on sale on Steam, go pick it up. It is definitely worthwhile. Thank you very much for talking to us today. Much appreciated.
Thank you for being here.
Okay, guys, my name is Totalbiscuit, and I will see you next time.